Okay, so shear for this morning is Gozeiz. Gozeiz meaning shearing, and shear on shearing. Yes, in terms of Hilchos Shabbos, and I welcome Stu. Thanks for coming. Stu always says he wants to come for a shiurim, so this time he's actually leading. And we're going to deal with three halachic topics. Number one, the issue of combing hair on Shabbos, and in particular combing a sheitel. Number two, you're not going to be able to comb your sheitel after this on Shabbos. Number two, the issue of removing fingernails, and in particular a woman who's going to mikvah Friday night and realizes that she didn't cut her nails before Shabbos. And then number three, the issue of plucking feathers, and specifically you get cooked chicken on your plate on Shabbos and you see it's got a feather in the skin.
Like the shear fat with wives.
So the question is, can you remove it? First one, combing hair. So the Shulchan Aruch writes in Rechaim Shin Gimel Chav Zayin, based on the Gemara Nazir Daf Mem Beis about a Nazir, that you're not allowed to comb your hair on Shabbos. The Nazir isn't talking about Shabbos. It's the issue that the Nazir isn't supposed to cut his hair, and so he's told that he's not allowed to brush his hair, because if he brushes it, he's going to end up pulling out hairs. And if someone will say, well, it's not. If someone will say there that it's not a guaranteed result, nonetheless, it's something that he wants. Because when you brush your hair and there are hairs that are out of place, you want to remove them. Now, the truth of the matter is that may depend a little bit on culture. It may depend a little bit on how much hair you have left. That's what the Gemara says regarding the Nazir.
Did the Rav send out to the
No, I didn't send it out this week. That's the Gemara Nazir. Based on that, the Shulchan Aruch says you wouldn't be allowed to comb your hair on Shabbos because you pull hair out of your head. We're going to call that Gozeiz, even though it's not shearing in the strict sense. You're not cutting it. Nonetheless, and it says even with soft bristles, the hair is going to come out. The Ramah is more lenient. The Ramah says if you use your hand, that's all right. The Rashi in Shabbos Pei Aleph Amud Beis actually does say it's a psig reisha. He says it's a guaranteed result that when you brush your hair is going to come out of your head. The Rivash challenges that in Shuvah Shin Tzadi Daled, based on the fact that the Gemara itself that I just quoted in Nazir says it's not a guaranteed result. It's not a psig reisha. The Gemara says there that it's only because you want the stray hairs to come out. So what am I supposed to do for Rashi, who says that it's a psig reisha? So the Magen Avraham addresses this in Shin Gimel Chav Beis. And he says that Rashi might be talking about a harsher brush. Rashi may be talking about some kind of a stiff, bristled brush. And the reason Rashi would do that is because he wants to talk about the case in which you don't want the hair to come out. In other words, I'm going to say, you're telling me that it's true that it causes the hair to fall out. But what if I don't want it to fall out? So he's going to say, well, I'm dealing with a psig reisha case. A case of harsh bristles. So in other words, as the Magen Avraham understands it, where it's a harsher brush and it's a psig reisha, so even if you don't want the hair to come out, it's irrelevant because it's a guaranteed result. Even though you'll say it's the lo nichale, you don't even want the hair to come out.
Actually, this commentator Gemara is not talking about the Gemara.
He's not talking about. Well, his Shabbos Pei Aleph Amud Beis. He's not on the Gemara.
Oh, not on the Gemara. Okay.
Correct. But a softer brush would not be psig reisha. The Aruch HaShulchan in Shin Gimel Lamed Beis agrees with the Magen Avraham, and it seems like the Mishnah Berurah in Shin Gimel Pei Zayin does as well, permitting use of a soft brush. That's in terms of live hair in your normal hair. What about combing a sheitel? So the Piskei Teshuvos.
So the Mishnah Berurah is saying a soft brush because he's under the assumption that we don't want our hairs removed.
Either that or we're at least neutral on it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you say it's a psig reisha of lo nichale,
yeah.
So then we're now open to the horror that's...
Theoretically, yes. The question is, no one seems to consider it lo nichale. In other words, everyone says either lo ichbas le, or he wants it. No one entertains the idea that I don't want the hair to come out. Right. But the truth is, if you were brushing your hair in a way that could remove hairs, then you can't really make the argument you don't want it to happen. You should have been more careful.
I think the Magen Avraham says that also. He says you want your hair to be straight. If a requirement to make your hair straight is that the ones that aren't straight get taken off, and that's what your intention is.
Right. Still.
Definition between combing and brushing.
Right. So the term that they often use is combing, They use the term masreik, which in modern Hebrew means a comb, but it's unclear really how much of a difference they have between them. They distinguish more between soft bristles and hard bristles. From the Mishnah in Kalim, which is not a Shabbos discussion at all, though, it sounds like they had a comb structure. They talk about a comb that's mekabel tumah, if it's missing some of the bristles, so that they're not close enough together to actually make an impact. So they had combs. That's very clear. But the Gemara seems to use these terms back and forth, as do the Shulchan Aruch and the Poskim. They don't seem to really distinguish.
And there's the things with hairs and there's things from wood.
Yeah, right. So what about the Sheitel case? So the Piskei Teshuvos in Shin Gimel Yud quotes poskim who are strict with a Sheitel, just as they are with live hair. Saying that you're not allowed to do it. The poskim generally that I saw don't like it. They don't like combing a sheitel, but they will permit it with soft bristles if it's done gently. That's where they're willing to permit it. So the base hang on.
Say it again.
They don't want you brushing a sheitel.
Yeah.
For reasons that we'll get to.
Right.
We have 3 different potentially surim involved.
Right.
But they will permit it if you use a brush that has soft bristles and you do it gently. That's where they will permit it. The Beis Yitzchak is the best tshuva on this topic. This is what I mentioned to you yesterday. Yitzchak Shmalkash in Orach Chaim Tesvav has a tshuva in Hilchos Tefillah. It's not in Hilchos Shabbos, and it's a long tshuva against sheitels. He doesn't like human hair sheitels. And along the way, he lists all these reasons why you should not have a human hair sheitel, and one of them is that you might come to comb it on Shabbos. In other words, we should answer sheitels because you might come to comb the sheitel on Shabbos. I shared this with Rabbi Baruch yesterday, and his response was, well, you should have the same thing with a techel, right, lest you tie it on Shabbos. Right, that was his other answer, was you should make it right shape your heads. Well, you shouldn't bite your nails in general. Your mother told you not to.
Okay, but it's not the same. It's not so far.
What could you
Well,
do about it?
it is very far-fetched. It's very far-fetched.
Yeah,
it's really like reason number 12 in like 13 of not to, but it's a very interesting
the
truth.
rationale of not doing something during the week because you might come to do something on Shabbos.
So that idea in and of itself, perhaps, but here it's something that is being done for the Tzorach Mitzvah. Right? It's not something that it's like I have a habit, I bite my nails or whatever. Like they're doing it in order to cover their hair, right? It's for halachic purpose, and you're telling me don't do it because you might comb it on Shabbos. The answer is don't comb it on Shabbos.
He's not saying don't do it. He said don't do it with human.
You shouldn't have a refrigerator because you might forget to take out the light bulb before Shabbos.
Okay.
I
I never started making faces when it's so early. But
yes. But I knew this was one that you would. We have more to see on this.
That's remain, but his general, he's okay with synthetic, not hair.
Right. So Ayin Sham. Ayin Sham is what I'm going to leave it for.
That's what I was about to say. It's difficult to say it's a tzorech mitzvah because there are many other ways. It's not as if he's stopping that. Don't cover your hair anymore because you don't have. It's difficult to call it tzorech mitzvah.
Okay, I think that we're discussing a little.
Yeah, a little bit. So the Shmir Shabbos Kehalchasa in Yud Daled Memvav, as well as the Mincha Shabbos. Mincha Shabbos is a fascinating sefer. It's on Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. So you can find it on HebrewBooks.org. It's Siman Pei. It's Sivka and Kuf Yud Zayin. Says better to avoid it. Both of them say better to avoid it, but you can use the brush with the soft bristles, the Eglei Tal in Gozeiz, Sivka and Yud, or Sif Yud I should say. Sheitel. This is all Sheitel.
The issue would be.
I'm coming back to it in a minute. I'm coming back to what the issue is. I just wanted to present them. I'm presenting the psak first, and then the reason second. Yes. And then the Eglei Tal in Gozeiz Yud says to use a finger. He says use your finger to do it. So what's the issue? What are we talking about here? So Eglei Tal considers and dismisses the first option, which is that it's menapates. Menapates is when you take flax, and one of the first things you do is you comb it through in order to separate the strands of flax. So in menapates, which is not one of the regular simanim in Eglei Tal, it's one of the Avnei Nezer ones that are at the end. So it's Siman Tesvav, Sif Beis, says that it's not menapates because menapates only applies by talush, by separated strands. In other words, strands that are not rooted in something, and these strands are actually anchored. They're in something. They're in the sheitel. So he's willing to call it mechubar for the sake of he's calling it part of a single entity in order to say that it's not menapates.
It's very difficult.
No, menapates is one of the. I think menapates is one of the 39. No. Go back and take a look fast. I thought menapates was one of the 39.
It's very strange that if it's connected to the shaitel, it's considered mechubar, because from that point of view, if I tie all the flexes in the end and they're connected to each other, are they mechubar?
So that's exactly what he's pushing here.
But it's not mechubar to anything. It's mechubar to a talush.
It's mechubar to itself.
Yeah, menapates is one of the 39.
I think the point here is that it's mechubar to itself, right?
Yes.
The whole thing of menupa is to separate entities, but if it's the same thing, there is no nipus. It's not because
it's not mechubar in the sense that it's yonic. It's not. There's no nourishment passing from a root into
No, but so also if you tie a few flexes together, it won't be menapates.
According to this, yes. I mean, no, but it could be.
Maybe not
Could be.
enough.
I don't tie it on Shabbos, but yeah. That's one. What about his second concern, and the main concern that's brought up, is Tolesh. So the Mincha Shabbos, in the sif I mentioned earlier, says indeed that this is Tolesh. You're pulling it out. Whether he brings two possibilities. Either because you're going to pull it out of the weave that it's in, the hair is coming out of the net that it's woven into, or because you're going to split the hair itself. You're going to cut the hair. In other words, the hair will snap as it's being pulled. He mentions maybe it's mekalkel. He dismisses that idea. Now, the truth is, I only read through the Mincha Shabbos on this point very quickly. The Ketzos HaShulchan, which is the Grach Noah, in Chelek Ches, Simen Kuf Mem Vav, Seif Chaf Aleph, thinks that the way he presents the Mincha Shabbos is that the Mincha Shabbos doesn't really believe that it's Tolesh. He doesn't really believe that it's called pulling something out because it's already talush. It's already separated from the place, where it started. Right. The Shmir Shabbos Kehelchasa in Perek Yudalit footnote Kuf Chaf Gimel quotes Shlomo Zalman Auerbach saying that it depends on the machlokas regarding brooms. Dealing with, well, really, they're brushes more than brooms is what he's talking about. He's talking about like a clothes brush where they had something made of thin pieces of wood and they're all anchored in a base, and the Ramah writes in Shin Lamed Zayin Beis that you're not allowed to use such brushes because the bristles may break. The Bir Alacha over there quotes the Birkei Yosef in Shin Lamed Zayin Aleph, who says that even if they break, it's not a malacha, and it's not a guaranteed result as well, and it's not something you want, and so on, and therefore he's not bothered by this problem with the brushes. So Shlomo Zalman says, if you side with the Ramah that you can't use these brushes lest the bristles break, then you also can't comb the sheitel lest the hairs snap. If, on the other hand, you follow the Birkei Yosef, that even if the hairs do snap, it's not a malacha. Even if the bristles do snap, in this case of the broom, snap, it's not a malacha. The same thing is going to be true for the hair in the sheitel. The question fundamentally is, will this be called tolesh? That's the malacha we're talking about, because you are taking hairs that are now not anchored where they grew, but anchored in this weave that they've now become attached to.
The Bir Halacha says that broom case, the malacha would be soser.
Soser rather than tolesh. That's interesting.
Yeah, he saw that.
I hear that. I hear that argument. I want to look it up again, but it could be that it's soser. Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with the concept of shaitas and how it works, but isn't it very expensive and it will obviously be a mekalkel? Meaning, in my hair, you have already things that are disconnected, but in the shaitel, isn't it something that people really take care of and they will be very careful not to be tolesh anything? So wouldn't it be really a psikresha de lo nichale and a really mekalkel if this thing is worth 5,000?
Separate things. Psikresha de lo nichale, we are being machmir.
No, first of all, davar she'eno mitkaven. It doesn't sound like it's a psikresha. Meaning, in my hair, it's more obvious to say that all the times there'll be hairs that are not there, and when I'll do it, so I'll take some out. In the shaitel, it shouldn't happen generally.
See, I think you're right in theory about mekalkel. The problem is that we generally assume that we're talking about a woman who won't wear it in its current state, and therefore she needs to comb it out and get rid of any hairs that are not
But are they really, is it that common that their hairs are out already? Isn't it much more of a davar she'eino mitkaven and less of a psikreisha? Because in my hair, so there's a process of growing, so all the time there's a hair.
That's a realistic question.
Yeah, you have to.
ואני שואל את הרב אם יש לו, זה לא
My shadel, I don't usually.
The thing is, it's similar. He's doing it as a psikreisha. I want to comb. I don't want hairs removed. Like we said earlier, when you want to comb your hair, get rid of the non-straight ones. So if that requires removing those non-straight ones, so it's like a given, but that's what you're trying to do. So are we viewing this as a psik ratio, or is it that I'm viewed as being mechavin to removing the hairs?
I don't understand if in Shaitel it's the same thing, because they're not supposed to be hairs, they are disconnected.
No, but it's not disconnected, but some of them are not in the right place. They are, I don't know, maybe it was broken, it's now pointed not in the right direction. So you want to...
Or it got mashed against something and now it's shaped funny.
And you must take it, you must get rid of some of the hairs.
זה נשמע לי כמו משהו שאנשים הולכים לספרית או למשהו שהם יעשו ואנשים לא יסתכלו בלעשות את זה לבד.
לא, זה תלוי.
אני חושב שהפוסקים שכתבו את זה הם הכירו יותר את המציאות מאשר מה ש...
No, the answer is that it depends. There are things that they'll go to a professional for, and then there are times that they'll just take care of it themselves. And a Shabbos morning, before shul, they'll take care of it themselves. That's what you were going to say.
Does that make sense? They're not viewing it as psik ratio. They're viewing it as you're essentially being mechavin to getting rid of those non-straight hairs.
Right. See, one of the arguments of the Birkei Yosef in the broom discussion was that it's not a psik ratio. That was an argument that he presented as part of his argument. In other words, he said it's not really a malacha, soser/tolesh, and that it's also not a psik ratio.
Not meaning it's more mekel than a psik ratio. He said.
Yeah.
Okay, but here we're assuming it's a given that this is going to happen.
Well, if you do it more harshly, which is why the Shmir Shabbos says, I'd like you to do it softly, with a finger or with a soft brush.
Okay.
Right?
I think the assumption is really strange, because the hairs are usually at place and you want to move them.
I think you need to look at a sheitel.
Yeah, אני גם חושב שאתה...
Yeah, I think you need to look at a sheitel first, and then you can have a discussion about the reality.
האמת היא שבמקרה יש לי בבית, כי מיכל הביאה לפורים איזה משהו.
I don't think the one you get for Purim is going to be a good example.
No, one is people gave a real one that she stopped using.
Okay. All right. I want to mention the third of the malachas, because the third one, frankly, to me is the most compelling. I'd never thought about it before, but I think it makes sense, and Baruch is not going to agree with me. And that's metakin mana. You're actually fixing it. You already experiment. The Ketos HaSholchan, that's the Grach Noah in Chelik Zayin, Siman Kuf Mem Vav, and it's a footnote on the bottom. It's footnote Vav, quotes them in Chashabbos, with the point that we just discussed about Tolej, or maybe Sozer, and adds that it's also metakin mana. You're fixing it if the sheitel is unwearable without the combing. If she says, I can't go out wearing this, and now she has to comb it and fix it, now she's fixing it. That's a huge problem, because in that case, it doesn't matter what kind of brush you use. That's not the point. He revisits it in Chelek Ches Kuf Mem Vav Siv Chaf Aleph, and there he's more makel. It sounds as though he only wanted to say metakein in order to explain why the Iglei Tal prohibited it. In other words, he knows the Iglei Tal said don't do it, and he doesn't believe that it's because of Tolesh. So, what else could it be? It's not Tolesh, it's not Menapetz. What might it be? Well, maybe the reason the Iglei Tal said no brushing is because of Metakin Mana. So that's his explanation that he comes up with, is Metakin Mana. But I have to say, having heard women say, I can't wear this sheitel like this, I wonder why it isn't Metakin Mana. You're taking something that wasn't usable and you're making it usable.
Belsky says, I saw quoted that it is Metakin Mana.
Really? Where did you see that?
Halachically speaking, it's really bad.
Yeah, I've seen this.
Because it's not a mana, it's not a metaken.
I don't remember that it's Metakin mana.
And then, isn't it in Shmir Shabbos Gilchos too, and we saw it after?
I did not see Shmir Shabbos say that it was Metakin Mana.
I
I did not see Shmir Shabbos say that. In Perek Yudal there.
I don't remember.
If it was Metakin mana, he wouldn't allow you to use the soft brush either.
Right.
No?
Yeah, the finger you can use, but it's not an act of metakin.
Why not?
Because the finger is just running a finger. Metakin assumes, when you say something is fixing, it assumes that you're doing something that is substantive. The fact that I ran a finger through something isn't really changing it in a
we were
material
measuring
way.
substantive as the woman saying, I'm not going to go out with it like this, but now I will go out with it like that.
Yeah, but I think there's also that you changed it.
With my shell open, so closing it is metaken mana?
I agree, and therefore, but I don't see how you can. If you're saying mitaken mana,
right? So we need a separate shear on mitaken in general, but unquestionably it has to have a threshold of change. It isn't simply that I did something to make it usable. It's I did something significant to make it usable.
No, when a woman says I can't go out like this, it means she's embarrassed. It doesn't mean she can't wear it and go out.
Right, but that makes it usable. Because you're not going to go out with it like it
that
is.
changes the woman's mind. If you give her enough compliments, it will also make it usable. So
I'm recording the audio on this.
No, זה לא דבר
And it's at 19 minutes and 58 seconds.
אני באמת אומר, אז מה זה מתקן מנה? No, really.
All right, I'm going to go weiter with it, but you're right. We need to revisit Mitaken Mana better. But I had to bring this when I saw this. This was remarkable. No, because he's agreeing with me. He's disagreeing with Ezra. The issue of removing fingernails as a separate one. So what's the issue of cutting fingernails on Shabbos? So I overheard from Baruch Shir yesterday. You already dealt with some of this. So cutting fingernails with a kli, with some kind of a utensil or implement that's dedicated for that, is asur. That's prohibited. It's a Torah of Gozeiz. The Shulchan Aruch says it in Shin Mem Aleph. The Aruch HaShulchan brings it in Shin Chav Ches Mem Aleph. That's one of the tricky things when you deal with this halacha, is that it shows up twice. It shows up once in the laws of medicine on Shabbos, which is Shin Chav Ches, and it shows up a second time in the laws of Gozeiz in Shin Mem. Now, the tendency among most poskim is to say that you're only actually chayav midoraisa. It's only biblically prohibited if you want the nail. Because otherwise it's lachash and tzricha legufa. Normally, shearing is, I shear wool because I want wool. Here, I'm shearing the nail, I have no interest in the actual nail. So the Magen Avram brings that in Shin Mem Gimel. However, the Pri Megadim in Eshel Avram to Shin Chaf Ches Lamed Aleph disagrees, because the model for shearing in the Mishkan was removing the wool, not for the sake of the wool, he says, but I didn't understand it, but that's what he asserts in Eshel Avram. Not because you wanted the wool, but because you wanted to remove the wool and now use the animal.
Yeah, that's the Shvat Rivash.
Yeah.
He's speaking about Torot HaTchashim that were on the Mishkan.
Right.
So they were cutting the...
Right. My problem with the idea is that you also sheared because you wanted the wool. And if you look at the Seder in the Lamed Tes Malachos, it's put there as shearing in order to have the wool.
Yeah, they're both true.
So why is this? So his point is,
I got rid of the hair to use the patachkins. If I wanted wool for the urios, I was shearing sheep for the wool. They were both.
So in
other words, it'll help me. It'll help me either way. Okay.
People also shear sheep also that they're growing for not for their wool.
Right.
I mean, it's part of the health process.
Right. No,
sheep itself.
the question is the model in the Mishkan, though. The question is not what I do in my farm in New Zealand. But I hear the point that all you need in order to say it's not called a melacha and it's tzricha legufa. In other words, in order to make it tzricha legufa, I just need to show that there was some use that was like this. I don't need to prove that there was all uses like this. So no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So that's the Pri Megadim's point, and therefore he says you'll be liable midoraisa for cutting your nails with a kli on Shabbos. What if you do it without a kli? What if you do it by hand? What if you do it by biting them with your mouth? What if you cut somebody else's nails? So the Gemara in Shabbos, Tzadi Dalet and Beis, it's brought in the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, Perek Tes Halach Ches, brought in the Shulchan Aruch and Shin Mem Aleph says asur. But that's already a shinui. That's an unusual way to do it. He mentions it regarding hand or cutting someone else's nails. The Mishnah Berurah there in Shin Mem Aleph adds using your teeth. He says that's a shinui.
Someone else's with a kli or someone else's without?
Cut it even with a kli, it sounds like. It sounds like even cutting someone else's with a
That's
kli.
very strange.
It is very strange.
It
is very strange, and I don't think we do that. I think that when we look at the poskim we're going to talk about regarding mikvah, they're going to view with a kli as being not a shinui, even if you're doing somebody else's nails. That's the way it's going to sound. What if the nail is mostly separated? Someone has a hangnail and needs to get rid of it on Shabbos. So the Gemara in Shabbos, Tzadi Dalet Amud Beis, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, and this is tricky. Did you go through this? Which part it's about? The tzitzin and the Pirush Lamala?
Going up and
Pirush
down.
Lamala, we spoke about Pirush Lamala, we spoke about Pirush Rubat.
Okay, so this is important to know about. No, but this is important it's important for what's coming now, because it's going to change everything about how we understand that. Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, if you have mostly separated nails or tzitzin, then it's mutter for you to remove them by hand, and you're potter if you do it with a kli. Rabbi Yochanan says this assumes that they separated klape mala and caused pain. And Rashi says separation klape mala causes greater pain. The Lavush, quoted in the Pri Megadim, Mishpat Zav, Shin Chav Ches Lamed Aleph, and in the Mishnah Berurah, Shin Chav Ches Tzadi Hey, acknowledge that it's really hard to figure out the majority for tzitzin. What does that mean? And so they basically say it's that which most people would remove. That's what they say is the gather as far as the tzitzin. However, we then have a machlokes, which I'm sure you saw, Rashi Rabbeinu Tam, whether Piresh Lamala means towards the fingertips, Rashi's view, or Piresh Lamala means towards the hand, which is Rabbeinu Tam's view. Which is a very funny machlokes to have, because they're talking about something which is going to cause you pain. You would think there would be agreement as to which was more painful.
No, it's a machlokes about it also. Is the Tnai of Piresh Lamala the same as the
Right. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Shulchan Aruch tzitzin are these little things here.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of the location of where it was, right? Not what direction it's pointing. Because I can change that in a second if I wanted to.
Right, so it appears. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Aruch HaShulchan say nothing to do but wrap it up and wait till after Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch Shin Chav Ches Lamed Aleph, the Aruch HaShulchan and Shin Chav Ches Mem.
What is the tzar that we speak about here?
Yeah, so the tzar, I believe, is pain that the person feels, physical pain.
Physical pain?
Not, I want to remove it. Physical pain. Yes.
Now, if it's dead, which is what we're assuming.
Because it's anchored in your flesh. You've never had this. This happens to me every winter.
I'm ripping the live skin.
No. I understand what you're saying, but the point is that it's causing pain every time it catches on something.
No catches.
This winter I didn't have it. This winter in Toronto I did not have it.
This winter there wasn't a winter we weren't going.
I in Toronto.
I have dead skin that's touched the live skin. You're saying it's tugging away at that live skin and causing me pain. So what we're theoretically talking about is cutting off just the dead skin without the live skin.
Yes.
Yeah, if you cut the live skin, it will hurt.
Sorry?
Because when it moves around, it's painful, and when you cut it, it doesn't move around as much.
Yeah, because it's going to be this tiny thing that doesn't catch on things. The pain that comes from these things is when they get caught on things.
What I say in the show and these things.
I heard you say it at the end of this year. I don't think it's true. The lashon that they use is not like that.
It's not hard so much.
So the question is, when we talk about the separation upward thing, is that actually talking about the tzitzin at all? Or is it talking about the nail? When you look at the flow in the Gemara, it sounds like you could definitely argue that the separation upward, Piresh Lamala, is actually only about Tziporin. The Iglei Tal and Gozeiz Ches, like the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Chav Ches Lamed Aleph, assume it refers to the nail and the tzitzin, but the Meiri, there in that Gemara in Shabbos Tzadidal Amid Beis, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Ketzos HaShulchan of the Grachna in Kuf Mem Gimel, the Oz Nidbaru in Zion Lamed Beis, who sees this in the language of Rashi as well, says that it's only about the tzitzin. It's not about the I think I said the opposite before. It's only about the tzitzin, not about the nail. Piresh Lamala is only about that. So I would have assumed that Piresh Lamata would be... let's pretend that Lamala means towards the fingertip. Okay?
That's it.
So Lamala means towards the fingertip. So what it would mean is, did it peel up from the skin this way? Or did it peel up from the skin that way? In other words, is it anchored at the bottom of it, or is it anchored at the top of it?
What's the difference? I could just move the skin in the other direction and look. Oh, now I have Lamala.
No, it's skin that was part of your finger that got peeled up.
Oh, that's a tzitzin. But what about the nail?
Yeah, but I'm saying Piresh Lamala, according to these poskim, isn't about Tziporin. It's only about the tzitzin.
Yeah, but they call it into the poskim.
We don't poskim like them. I don't have to answer for them. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't poskim.
Like, what direction is the incision?
Shabbos Kelchasa doesn't poskim like them. Sorry?
Yeah, it's like, what direction is the incision going in this way, or is it that way?
Right.
In my skin.
It's the incision, that's correct. So, the way that the Meiri takes it, Shulchan Aruch Harav takes it, Ketzos HaShulchan takes it, Oz Nidbaru takes it, Shmir Shabbos Kelchasa takes it, they all say this, that Piresh Lamala is specifically talking about the tzitzin, it's not talking about the nail. As far as nails are concerned, it simply is the majority separate, or is the majority not separate. I don't care about Lamala and Lamata. So, what if a woman is going to mikvah and realizes she didn't cut her nails beforehand? So the Shulchan Aruch writes in Yeridea Kuf Tzadi Ches Yud Ches, also see Kuf Tzadi Ches Chaf, that the idea of cutting nails before going to mikvah is a chumrah. Technically speaking, all you need to do is remove all the dirt from beneath the nails, but because we are worried that people don't always clean very well underneath their nails, therefore we say better to cut it and you'll be okay. And the Ramah is very strict about this chumrah. He says, not dealing with a Shabbos case, but in general, he says a woman who goes to mikvah and then realizes she missed a nail would actually go back and tovel again. Although there is discussion in the poskim whether that's really true, and what if a woman actually went home and was with her husband and she remembered the next day, because now you're going to cause laws on their bia that they had together the night before. So that's not simple and straightforward. And if you're in a position to there is such a discussion, yeah. If you're ever in a position to paskin it, make sure you research it before telling her to go back to mikvah again. But what should she do if it's Friday night and in the rush of things before Shabbos and taking care of her chafifa and getting everybody ready and the kids ready and so on, she forgot, or she realized she missed a nail as she was cutting the nails. So the shach in the Nekudas HaKesef, I'm going to give you 3 recommendations. The shach first in his Nekudas HaKesef says it's best to remove the nail with your fingers. If that's not possible, use someone who isn't Jewish, and he bases himself on the Mordechai regarding Chol HaMoed, where he says, what does a woman do if she has to go to mikvah during Chol HaMoed? Cutting your nails, as he understands it, should not be done on Chol HaMoed. So he says, you have a non-Jew to do it. So he says, do that there too.
Even with a kli.
Even with a kli, apparently, which goes back to the question of whether a kli is considered a shinui if someone else is doing it or not. He says, what about misayeya? What about the fact that he doesn't say biyad? He says use an akum even with a kli. What about misayeya? You're helping them when you position your finger for them to cut the nail. He says misayeya in bo mamash. There's no substance in helping out. And it's malach shenetzricha legufa because you don't want the nail. That goes back to our initial question. The Magen Avraham quotes this. He has an introduction to Orach Chaim Shin Mem where he quotes this. The Aruch HaShulchan in Yeridea Kuf Tzadiches Mem Tes says use the non-Jew. He says you can't properly separate a nail using your hand or your teeth. He says. So he says you would actually go to a non-Jew and let them do it with a kli. That's the shach. And the Aruch HaShulchan cites it, as does the Magen Avraham. The Taz disagrees. The Taz in Kuf Tzadiches Chaf Aleph says just clean them well and go to mikvah. He says the Mordechai's advice regarding Chol HaMoed is completely irrelevant because on Shabbos we have a halacha called Amir La'akum. You can't tell non-Jews to do things that you can't do on Shabbos. It's not necessary for the mitzvah because you can tovel with your nails on. And second, he says because you're going to help out and misayeya, despite the argument of the shach, misayeya is significant. Helping out is significant, and so he says just clean them well and go to mikvah. By the way, I forgot to put this in my notes. I want to make sure to mention, a woman who is cleaning her nails on Shabbos also has to be careful that she not shave away some of the nail by accident in doing that. Like if you're going underneath the nail and poking stuff out, you can end up actually taking away a bit of the nail, and that Gozeiz in its own right.
Part of the nail?
Yeah, no, it's the thickness of the nail. You can actually end up... Yeah.
And you have to do talking.
Well, it depends if you're...
Pretty hard to do that.
Sorry?
You have to be scraping really hard.
You're trying to get away all the dirt and you're nervous about going to mikvah. That's the concern that some of the poskim do mention. The Badei HaShulchan, this is not the Badei HaShulchan on the Ketzos HaShulchan of the Grach Noah. This is the Badei HaShulchan Refival Cone, the blue sefer like that one over there, but not that one because that's on a different part of Yeridea. But the Badei HaShulchan on Tvila, Yeridea, Kuf Tzadiches, Kuf Nun Beis, says that you tell someone who isn't Jewish to do it with her hand or with her teeth. He says if that's not possible, I can't imagine why, then let them do it with a kli, because it's malacha shenetzricha legufa. If you don't have a non-Jew available who's interested in this job, then just clean them well. He does not suggest using your own teeth and hands, presumably because he agrees with the Aruch HaShulchan that you're not going to do it properly. You just make a mess. One other question that comes up within this, it's not really a Gozeiz discussion, but once we're on this, I have to mention it, is, are the tzitzin on the fingers themselves a chatzitza? A woman's going to go to mikvah Friday night, and it's in the wintertime, and she has those, skin peeling up at the base type things of her nail. Does she have to get rid of that? So based on the Taz Yeridea Kuf Tzadiches Chaf Beis and the Aruch HaShulchan Kuf Tzadiches Nun Aleph, they are indeed chatzitzos, because they say that any flesh that you are planning to remove from your body is a chatzitza, and people don't normally leave these. They tend to remove them. This is not a Shabbos discussion; it's a general discussion. Rav Menashe Klein in his Mishnah Halachos Yud Beis Tzadi Daled quotes the Tshuvos Pnei Yehoshua, who's very popular on this. Everybody mentions him, saying that if they are partially separate, they are a chatzitza, but if they are majority separate, they are not. And his reason is because they are...
You can have both of those in the same time. Partially separate is a chatzitza.
Yeah.
But
if it's mostly separate from the skin...
Mostly? The entire hand? What is mostly?
No, because you have the area of skin up here is the area that these tzitzin come from. So you would say if there's a bit of it that's still attached at the base versus the part that's torn, that's what I would gauge. You have to be here for a real winter, and then you'll know. But you're talking about after the last knuckle, I think. I think realistically that's what we're talking about. So
it partially separates a chatzitza.
Mostly separate. It's not because it's close to being removed. Karav li natek, which is bizarre.
Partially, you mean not mostly.
Right.
Less than okay.
Right. The Badi HaShulchan quotes this and is very bothered. This is again the Refavel Cohen Badi HaShulchan Kuf Tzadi Ches Kuf Samach Aleph is the Sif Katan. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. And he first of all he quotes the Chachmas Adam who says it's not a chatzitza because water gets in. And no one is makbid to remove these, he says, which is a Metzias question. Do people or don't they? The Pnei Yeshua's point about the majority removal being now close to removal, that's hard to understand, because if I had a piece of dirt that fell on my skin, it's also karav li natek, but it's a chatzitza. Right? It's also it's going to be removed. What does that mean anything? The Badi HaShulchan concludes that you should remove it.
I saw maybe because it's karav li natek, you could connect it with the chokhmah, because it's karav li natek, so the water goes in and... Anyway.
So you're retranslating karav li natek. Karav li natek no longer means you are likely to remove it. Karav li natek means that it's loose.
Yeah, it means
Right. Maybe. The end of the story is that everybody seems to hold that these are chatzitzos, and therefore a woman who realized Friday night that she had this would not be able to go on Shabbos, because however we were lenient regarding nails, we were not regarding tzitzin. Because we said that the Piresh Lamala issue, right, tells me that since I don't know which one is Piresh Lamala between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam.
Is only in order to earn the mitzvah inyan, so there would be a reason to be makir.
And that really bothers me. In a Chanami, that really bothers me. I agree with you entirely, but no one says that.
So if I have an Andrew do it, I mean, you're talking about trying to go in anyways.
Right.
But if you have an Andrew do it, so...
If I'm doing with a Deraisa, how can I ask an Andrew to do it?
You're dealing with a Safek Deraisa. And it's the Rabbanon, what's you...
It's a Safek Deraisa.
I don't know who's better, Rabbeinu Tam or Rashi.
Right, so that's fine. So it's Safek Deraisa L'chumra. You can have an Akum do a Safek Deraisa.
Akum do it, so it's the Rabbanon. I don't know if this Akum is in fact even doing Allah.
But Amir Akum is still usher.
But it's you're doing it with your hand. It's not the right time.
If you're doing... No, because tzitzin are not normally removed with a kli.
If it wasn't the right, then there wouldn't be a reason to be makir. It's true that the Gemara saw it as the Rabbanan.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry. Why do you say that?
Because unless it was the Rabbanan, mitzvah wouldn't be a kula. It wouldn't be a reason to be makir.
That's fair. Okay, so call it a Rabbanan, and therefore I should be able to have the Akum do it. It's an interesting idea. I haven't seen anybody suggest it, but it's an interesting idea.
I don't think that anybody would go to a goy to take out this.
No, if I'm going to go to them for my nails, I wouldn't go to them for the tzitzin.
Wait. It's a subject deraisa if I get rid of a tzitzin because maybe Rashi's right and this isn't a considered season, or maybe Rabbeinu Tam's right. So I tell a non-Jew to do it. I've now made it a suffix derabanan, haven't I? I'm telling a non-Jew to do this.
A non-Jew to do something that's a suffix.
He's doing the thing that is...
Maybe. And adding in, because Baruch is right, that we must hold that it's a Derabanan be Karo, because otherwise the Tsar wouldn't have been a good enough justification. So that's true. So adding that, maybe you should be able to suggest it. It's an interesting idea. I'm still bothered by the fact that no one suggests it.
When do you find a case where a woman remembers to do this and doesn't remember to cut her nails?
That a woman remembers to do this and doesn't remember to cut her nails? Oh, so in other words, you think that they go hand in hand, so to speak?
No, I think that's why. It's less common. You wouldn't find any. The problem of Ness does always succeed. It's the problem of
no. Right.
They always clean their cuticles before they go, no?
Yes.
It's like it's a part of the process. So why would you remember one and not the other? Okay.
No, but I think the answer is because it's Friday. And Friday all sorts of things happen. The last of the three, plucking feathers from the chicken. So this is the one that I'm waiting for you, right? We had a discussion about this. So the Yerushalmi in Shabbos, Perek Zayin Halacha Beis, and it's quoted in the Taz Shin Lamed Vav Yud. It's quoted in the Mishnah Berurah Shin Mem Hey Beis. Shin Mem Hey. The Mishnah Berurah presents different aspects of Gozeiz, and in his second piece there, that's what this is brought. It's also in the Aruch HaShulchan Shin Lamed Vav Lamed Gimel. They say that plucking hairs from a dead creature is an act of shearing. The Mishnah Berurah quotes the view of the Taz that therefore people who wear a coat that's a piece of hide with hairs in it have to be careful about plucking a hair out of this coat. The Aruch HaShulchan disagrees. The Aruch HaShulchan in Shin Lamed Vav Seif Lamed Dalet to Lamed Hey argues that this is bird specific. This is not about animals, it's only about birds. Because he asks, why does the Yerushalmi say that this applies even regarding a dead creature? When the Gemara discusses tolish from the ground, it only applies that only applies if the plant is alive. Right, when we talk about tolish, right? The Mishnah lists memachik in scraping hair off of a hide, as does the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos Perek Yud Aleph Halacha Hey, and they say you're liable only if you do it to the point of smoothing the entire hide. They make no mention whatsoever of an issue of removing hair from the hide. They're only worried about memachik and what's the shear for memachik. They don't mention gozeiz at all. The Gemara in Shabbos, Ayin Daled Amud Beis, talks about separating a wing from a bird and then plucking the feathers, and the possibility that if you pluck the feathers, you're liable for memachik if you smooth the entire surface. But no one mentions gozeiz. So the Aruch HaShulchan's answer is that the Yerushalmi is talking about birds and tolesh, not animals and gozeiz. That's his answer. The Gemara in Bechoros, Chav Hey Amud Aleph, distinguishes between tolesh and gozeiz. And it says one is only liable for tolesh when he's dealing with birds. He's not liable for gozeiz because tolesh is what's done with birds. The Rambam rules this way in Hachos Me'ilah Perek Aleph Halacha Zayin when he says that if you were to shear an animal, you would be liable for gozeiz, but not for tolesh. So the Aruch HaShulchan draws on that Rambam and the Gemara in Bechoros to say that gozeiz shearing is animals and tolesh plucking is birds.
Because by birds I'm doing a plucking instead of a cutting?
Well, watch what he does with it now. So he says that Yerushalmi that says it's even by a dead creature, and you said, well, how could that be regarding a dead creature? Tolesh, or what we thought was tolesh, applied only when the plant was alive. So his answer is that Yerushalmi is talking about birds. And tolesh for the bird will apply even when the bird is dead. Whereas for dead animals, you're only liable for an act of shearing, as brought in the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos Perek Tes Halacha Zayin. So he says one is liable only for plucking when it is alive, plucking from an animal. Only when it is, I really should just call it shearing. Only when the animal is alive. Just like you're liable for pulling a leaf from a branch only when the wood is connected to the ground. So in other words, what the Aruch HaShulchan has succeeded in doing is saying that tolesh is different from gozeiz, which we know, that we have ample precedent for. His chidush is that gozeiz, which we talk about regarding animals, will apply only if the thing is alive, and tolesh from birds will apply even if the bird is dead. That's the way that the Aruch HaShulchan concludes the discussion.
Years that we have gozeiz in dead animals?
Yeah. That's the Aruch HaShulchan's pshara. The Aruch HaShulchan always believes that everything can be resolved. So this is another example of it. So what about the cooked chicken then sitting on your plate? It's a dead bird.
That regarding the tachash,
yeah.
It's very hard to believe that they have taken this out when it was still alive.
It would hurt.
אבל לא בטוח, אולי הוא לא בהמה.
The tachash is not a bird. Whatever we know about it, we know it's not a bird. At least until someone finds another explanation for it. They had the fellow here to talk about tcheles last week, right? The holy snail. Okay, so do I really have an issue then if I'm dealing with the bird sitting on my plate? I have the chicken, and the chicken appears to be the chicken has a feather in it, and I remove the feather from the chicken. So some, in fact, argue that this is a problem of gozeiz, while others disagree. The Shmir Shabbos Gehilchasat, Perek Gimel, Seif Lamed, in his second asterisk comment on that Seif, he has two there, says don't remove the feathers from the chicken out of concern for gozeiz. In other words, it's on your plate, deal with it. This is consistent with the Mishnah Brura in Shin Mem, Seif Hey, or Seif Cotton Hey, I should say, part 2 there. The Zayis Ra'anan, Chelek Aleph, Siman Aleph, Sif Yud Beis, who's quoted in the Mincha Chadasha at the end of Mincha Shabbos in Perek Pei, Sif Lamed Aleph, is very harsh on this. He says people who pluck the feathers are Machal Le Shabbos, and he has a whole thing on this. He's very, very harsh. Others disagree for numerous reasons. The Kuntras over Oreach, which I have to admit I'd never ever heard of before this, quoted in the Mincha Chadasha. Sorry? Ovar Orach. It could be anything. The Ovar Orach would make more sense, though, right? Yeah, Orach would be a path. Orach would be a guest. Ovar Orach would be. He's a passerby, I suppose.
Did Rav search him or something?
No, I did not. He's quoted in the Mincha Chadash at the end of Mincha Shabbos Pei Lamed Aleph. So he disagrees. And he says, even the Taz, who was the one who was strict regarding the animal hides that you have as coats and all that, will agree the thing's been cooked. The hide is already like basar, it's like flesh, certainly for poultry when the skin becomes edible. So he says, come on, this thing is edible food already. Gozeiz does not apply. Notwithstanding Aruch HaShulchan deciding it was tolish, but he says Gozeiz does not apply. And if you look,
because it's already disconnected.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Your rationale is because it's not as strongly connected. That's why, or because it's food.
No, because it's food. We're gonna hear the strongly connected argument in a minute. I saw an editor's note in the Bar Ilan, and I'm trying to figure out where this editor's note was, because none of the things I'm quoting here are in the Bar Ilan. Oh, I know where. The Har Tzvi, I'm going to quote him in a minute, but the Har Tzvi in Tal Harim on the Lamites Malachos, under Gozeiz, Sif Gimel, is where I saw the editor's note from the Bar Ilan, who does note that the Menchas Chinuch on Gozeiz seems to believe that Gozeiz can be relevant for cooked things. Sorry? It's just, yeah?
Yeah, it's on the regular edition also.
Okay, because they noted it like it's the editor's. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with him, but I didn't think they did it that way in the CD. That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So it is original. It's not from the CD. It's from the son-in-law. Okay. But that's one reason that is. He says that Gozeiz can be relevant for cooked things. Can be, correct. Unlike what the Over Orach is trying to suggest.
So, just for clarification, the problem would be both if I take out the feeder and if I would peel off the skin entirely.
If I would peel off the skin entirely, I may have a different problem that we didn't get to yet.
So I have to
I'm
eat
saving
it
the
with
surprise
the
for you.
feather?
Sorry?
I have to eat it with the feather?
Well, I don't have to eat it with a feather. I can leave it on the side as I'm eating. In other words, here I have my drumstick. It's at the bottom of the drumstick. There's skin with the feather. I eat everything else.
There is... if I cannot take off the skin, I cannot take off the feather, then how can I eat the meat?
When can I take off? No, I can eat. We're going to follow the view that you're allowed to separate the skin.
So it's fine to separate the skin with the feather, and the problem is only to take the feather out of the skin.
Correct.
Even if you couldn't separate the skin, okay, you make an incision, you take the meat out from under it, take it off with a salad, what's the problem?
Other than looking strange, what's the problem?
Yeah, no, people that don't like eat chicken skin all the time do that.
Right. Right. He's from a family that's very health conscious. So that's one approach. The Ketos HaShulchan of the Grach Noah in Kuf Mem Gimel Aleph, he says you have to be Malamed Zechus because everybody does this. And his arguments that he brings include that shearing from a cooked bird is not at all derech geziza for anyone. He says because you don't want the feather, and he says that that's not what Gozeiz looks like. Gozeiz doesn't involve cooked animals, so that's his argument.
It's a shinui.
Not even shinui. It's not derech geziza b'kach. We didn't call that shinui. We said that's not the malacha.
So the Melachah.
The same thing as Avarach, basically.
No, but not because it's food, but because it's cooked. In other words, saying Gozeiz doesn't apply by food is different, because I'll say, what if I come up with a case, but something that's edible raw, right? As opposed to saying this is a cooked thing. No one does Gozeiz on cooked things. The Yesodei Yeshurun of Gedalia Felder brings two other reasons to be lenient. One is the point that Esther wanted to make before, that the root is weakened and it'll come out on its own. And the other is that Tosfos in Avodah Zarah holds that Gozeiz is not relevant if Pasku Gidulav. If it's no longer, I didn't see where the Tosfos was from. I didn't find the actual Tosfos. I just saw them quoted by the Yesodei Yeshurun. That if it's no longer growing anymore, it's no longer anchored in a base that's going to nourish it, then cutting it is not Gozeiz. So that's what I want to know. I have to see this Tosfos in Avodah Zarah. I didn't see this, and I don't understand how you could say that given all the sources about dead animals.
No, you probably shouldn't. Maybe it doesn't force that there's no causes, but it won't have us.
Yeah.
יכול להיות שהכיוון יהיה שכשהבהמה מתה יש still an amount of time that it isn't.
Right. So the Har Tzvi in Tal Harim that I just mentioned before sides with the Mekilim and says this is not a big deal.
Two quick questions.
The Yesodei Yeshurun sides with that, seems to side with that as well, although he doesn't actually come out with a ruling, but he seems to side also that he doesn't think it's such an issue, but keep in mind, the Shemir Shabbos Kehilchasa really doesn't want you doing it. Yes?
Apparently dead people's hair continues to grow.
That's true, actually, I forgot about that. Dead people's hair does grow.
I think that's a legend. It's not royal. That what happens is that the skin is yeah, exactly. Then it seems as the hairs grow, but it cannot go up to that.
All right, so we have to determine this. This requires some investigation.
Anyone wants to volunteer?
All right, and the last note, which I bring just to make Baruch grimace, is the Ketzos HaShulchan here in Kuf Mem Gimel Aleph. Dear Maskal Vehine quotes the Yeshua's Chachma to argue that pulling out the feathers is borer. Is borer. No problem with it. Well, he himself rejects that because he says it's nonsense. He says it's like the peel of a fruit. The peel of a fruit. He says it's not. He says the peel of a fruit you can remove before you eat the fruit, and so too you can remove the feather. He says that he views it as the same thing. That's not borer. I tend to side with him. But that's the upshot. Good. That was fun. You were quiet.